Welcome into the Football Night in America podcast. Couple guys that personify greatness in the National Football League. You know, Tony Dungy right there in the middle, and the hot rod, Rodney Harrison on the other side of your screen. So, fellas, I'm fired up about this. A couple of weeks away we are from opening weekend, Kansas City and Baltimore. And as you know, we're going to be shipping off to Brazil there for that opening Friday. So there's a lot going on around the NFL right now. Preseason in full swing. But probably top of the list here this week has been this Brian Flores, Tua Tagovailoa, and all that's occurred. So let's listen to it real quick, and I want your opinions on the other side. Here's Tua.
Can you explain to us the difference in practical terms between having a coach who did believe in you the way that he did and the difference between that and what was happening with Flores?
Yeah. Well, to put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you sucked at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. Like, you are accurate, you are the best whatever, you are this, you are that. Like, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And then you hear it, regardless of what it is, the good or the bad, and you hear it more and more, you start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear or that you probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start to believe that about yourself. And so that's sort of like what ended up happening. And it was, I mean, it's basically been, 2 years of training that out of not just me, but, a couple of the guys as well that have been here since my rookie year all the way till now.
All right, so that's obviously fascinating and a lot. I mean, you could tell that Levitard was like, whoa. I mean, these are some comments that kind of catch your attention. Coach, how do you hear that?
Yeah, that was very surprising to me, and that can happen. I tell you, in my career, Jack, I always tried to be a positive guy and encourage, but everybody has different styles, and I can tell you, too, that players hear different things. Even though I try to be positive all the time, not everybody takes it that way. And I can remember my playing career. I played for Chuck Noll. We won a bunch of Super Bowls. I was there for one of them. I loved Chuck Noll. Okay, because he taught me and he said, hey, here's what you need to do to get better. I wrote everything down. I did it. Terry Bradshaw won 4 Super Bowls, and he talks about Coach Noll, kind of not in that as bad as Tua said, but he wasn't the cheerleader for me. He didn't do this for me. He didn't embrace me. Terry needed that dad figure, and that wasn't Chuck. But I thrived under that. So I think there's something to how you hear it also, as well as what's being said, Rod.
I look at Brian Flores, and I knew him from the New England days, and he's not a terrible person. Now, he may be a bad coach and a coach that tried to copy Bill Belichick, and he tried to copy the old school ways. But at the end of the day, as a head coach, and you know this better than anybody, you have to maintain your integrity as a head coach. You can't try to be Bill Belichick. You can't try to be something that you're not. And I think that was his biggest mistake. Because you talk to some of the Vikings players, they love B-Flow. They love Brian Flores over there. I think he's learned a lot from his mistake with Tua. And, Coach, we've all had coaches that have said some things that we felt like kind of just disrespected us or made us feel uncomfortable. And a lot of times, for me, that would motivate me. A coach can yell and scream at me. He can yell and scream at Brady. But I think the thing that separates great coaches from average coaches is, like, I'll give you an example. You know how to get on a guy, when to get on a guy, but you also know when to put your arm around the guy and say, okay, guys, this is what it's going to be. You can't coach one way to every single player. You have to adjust to their personalities. And I think that's where B-Flow has grown.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And when I started coaching with Chuck Noll, that's what he told me. You got to get to know your players, and you've got to give them what they need. Some people need encouragement all the time. Other people do need that kick in the rear, and you have to give it to them. You mentioned Tom Brady. I heard him say he didn't mind the criticism from Bill Belichick because he knew that was trying to make the whole team better. Maybe he was getting criticized and it was sending a message to somebody else. And you've got to know your players. I tell you, when I first started coaching, my first coaching recruiting scouting trip was the University of Michigan. Jim Harbaugh was the quarterback. I'm looking at DBs, but Harbaugh threw an interception. Bo Schembechler was the head coach, and I never heard a quarterback get reamed out so bad on the field in front of the whole team. And I remember thinking, man, I couldn't play quarterback for that guy. If he screams at the quarterback like that after an interception, Harbaugh, it didn't bother him at all. And then when he went to the NFL and Mike Ditka screamed at him, it didn't bother him because he was ready for it. He responded to that. So you got to know your guys. And maybe Brian wasn't the best fit for Tua, but that doesn't make, as Rodney said, that doesn't make him a bad person or a bad coach.
But you also talk about the effect. 1 second, Jay. You also talk about the effect. You also talk about the effect on the locker room. And when your locker room sees that Tua was a star, and he was a star in college. He was a well-respected guy in college. Now he goes to the pros, and that locker room sees how Brian Flores is treating Tua, and they're looking at him, and it has a negative effect on the locker room. Those guys would not play for Brian Flores. They quit on him. They didn't continue to play hard. They didn't continue to fight because they didn't believe in their head coach. So you have to be very careful as a modern-day coach, coaching these modern-day players, that you don't get them, you don't disrespect them, and that's the key. All players want to be respected at the end of the day. Yelling, cussing, and screaming and all that stuff, you can get away with it with a few players, but most players are going to look at you like, man, talk to me as a man. That's the type of respect that you have to show these players.
Yeah, and obviously Tua had hard coaching in college. You go back to Nick Saban. I mean, he's getting coached hard in college, but I think just in the world in general, this is kind of the mental health era, right? Where we're focused on not only guys' physical health, but let's make sure that they're right mentally too. So in all forms of business and life, you're seeing a different manager style. You're seeing a really sort of softer approach. And I think that's translating now to football. We've seen it with McVay. We've seen it even with the Bengals, Zach Taylor, and the way we've just seen it, and specifically with the quarterback position. So how would Belichick coach Tom Brady? Because if that's what he was studying and learning, what was he seeing, studying, and learning? How do you think that translated here?
You talking to me?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, well, before I answer that, I would like to say this. When Nick Saban is yelling and screaming at you, you're more likely to take that because he has credentials. He has national championships. He has tons of guys he sent to the pros. He has tons of guys that come back and visit him. So when you're talking about Belichick, you talk about Dungy, you talk about Saban, these guys have the credentials. So when they walk in the locker room, they automatically get respect. These players feel like it's an honor to play for these guys. But B-Flow, he comes in like he's the man, yelling, cussing people out and just turning people off. And that's not a way to bring the team together. And like I said, he's not a bad guy. He had a rough experience as a head coach, and he's doing better as a defensive coordinator. And that's where he should stay.
And one other thing about that, Rodney, Nick Saban is yelling at 19-year-olds. Okay, now you got 25 and 30-year-olds. It's a little bit different. They, as you say,
they're millionaires.
Take it.
Right? These guys making 10, 15, 20 million a year. And you're looking at it like, dude, you know how much money I make? Why are you yelling at me?
That's the truth, man. That's the truth. So, Rod, how would he coach Tom Brady? Because you're saying like he is a legend. It's different, obviously, from that stature. But when you're sitting there in practice, how would you hear him actually give points or criticisms to Brady?
He would go in on Brady, just like Coach explained. He would yell at Tom and, what? Didn't you see the guy? He was wide open. And Tom would start explaining. But Bill had a respect for Tom because he knew how great Tom could be. Tom had everything. He had the brains, the work ethic, he had the unselfishness, and Bill tried to elevate Tom. Bill really loved Tom. He really had a lot of respect for Tom. So he would go hard on Tom. And like Coach said, we're looking at him like, man, he's going in like that on Brady. Like, we really have to make sure our stuff is tight.
And you also have to know your players. Warren Sapp played for me. Warren Sapp might be a sensitive guy, but I could say anything I wanted to Warren on the field. Just if it's going to help me win, I'm all for it. Other guys you have, hey, coach, that come in at, don't criticize me in front of the team. If you got something to say, say it to me personally. That's okay. If that's how they function, that's how I got to get to you.
Yeah.
Now that's coaching, Jack.
That's coaching. I mean, obviously, Coach Dungy knows coaching better than anybody on planet Earth. But, I was just thinking with Coach McDaniel, he gets this new age and this new era. And, I think you've seen Tua, a different side of his personality. I think you're seeing authentic Tua now. He was kind of shy and everything coming up. Even his younger brother sort of has a shy personality. And you've seen him now blossom, and he's grabbing the microphone at training camp, and he's willing to be the leader and the face of this team. And so I think it's the confidence that you see in his play and him getting the ball out of his hands and getting it out fast and all the crazy motions and open guys it's created. But you're also seeing it in his personality. It's a reflection of what McDaniels has been able to put into him.
Also,
okay, but we just saw that graphic. We just saw that graphic. It didn't look that much different now. And when I'm looking at results, 15-8 versus 19-11, I'm not going to say, Brian Flores was terrible and he wasn't helping Tua. They won some games now with him.
Yeah, I mean, they did. Interception numbers may be the only thing that's sort of glaringly different there. All right, so we'll see how it all shakes out with Flores, and he's probably also is still learning how to coach quarterbacks. A different thing coaching linebackers and defensive ends and safeties, and when you're comfort zone, and then all of a sudden you're a head coach, you're coaching quarterbacks. That's just a different dynamic, really. Let's get to some of the preseason stuff, guys, because we've been watching all this preseason. We got the rookie quarterbacks going on. We got contract situations. I want to go biggest disappointments first, and then we'll come back for the biggest high notes that we've seen so far. So biggest disappointment so far, Coach Dungy, for you in this preseason?
Well, for me, it's definitely been the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. The last time we were together, I said, hey, you got a couple of new quarterbacks in there. If they can mesh and get it going with the defense that they have, they can be a contender for a playoff spot.
Right.
And this first team offense hasn't scored in the entire preseason. So what's going on there? And yes, they've got to get Russell Wilson and they've got to get Fields going. But this line's got to protect. They've got to get their running game going. They've got to understand what their new system wants to do. And I just think, boy, they got to get going here in this next week.
Yeah, and I think what would help them if Mike Tomlin, I know it's still a little early, would come out and just name Justin Fields the starter. I think he should be the starter. I think he gives them a lot of energy. I think he gives them just the ability to do so many different things, open up the offense. And Russell's on a 1-year deal, and he's old, and he will not be back next year. So if it's me and I'm looking toward the future, I'm looking at Justin Fields. And if he struggles, you can always bring Russell Wilson in. He's the veteran. He's the Super Bowl champion. He's the guy that has all the experience. But, Coach, starting off, I'm putting Justin Fields in there to see what he can do and see if he's my long-time quarterback, if he's my long-term quarterback.
And I'm kind of the other way around. I'm saying I'm a Russell Wilson believer. Let's get that running game going. Let's get back to Steeler football and have that quarterback that can just make a play and guide us here. And then if that doesn't go, if I need some juice, then I can put Justin in the game. But in one way or another, they got to get back to running the football, being a dominant physical team, and then that quarterback making some complimentary plays.
Yep. At least they have options that can go win those late fourth quarter. It always seems like with Pittsburgh, it comes down to the fourth quarter. Can they put together a drive or two to just go get the field goal and win it? They're going to have a couple options running and passing to do both. What's your philosophy on playing guys in the preseason, Coach? Did you feel like playing the starters was the right idea, sitting the starters? What's your philosophy?
It's hard for me even to watch these preseason games now, Jack, because we did have a philosophy. To me, preseason was about, number one, getting your veteran guys ready to go and ready to play. And then number two, finding out who your young guys that you could count on and depend on. So to me, it was having a formula. Well, our starters need to play 60 plays, 80 plays during this preseason. Now I got a rookie running back. I've got Joseph Adai. I've got to get him in there some with Peyton Manning so he knows how to function with Peyton. And those are the things that we felt like we had to do. Now it seems like everybody, Rodney, is just, I got to protect my guys. I got to make sure nobody gets hurt and we get to the regular season healthy. That's all we're talking about. And I don't understand it.
Coach, it's disgusting to me because as a player, I've always wanted to play in a preseason game. I would actually get mad at Coach Belichick or any other coach and say, hey, you guys only have one series. Like, Coach, we need at least 2 series so we can communicate. We can have some different looks. We can try some different things. And I look at Bryce not playing down in Carolina. Yeah. Bryce Young, like, why is Bryce Young not playing? If anything, he should be playing each game. It should increase a little bit more. So maybe the first game, the first quarter, maybe the second game, the first 2 quarters, and then maybe the third game, he should play into the fourth quarter. But for these guys, even Aaron Rodgers, even some of these older players, I use training camp to get me in shape, to get me prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, and a place where I can really be around my teammates, communicate. You have to be on the field with your teammates to be able to interact and communicate with them. So not playing is just to me, it's just just a disaster, man, not playing. It's just bad.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think back to my career, if I told Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, you guys are going to practice, but you aren't going to play in any game, they would come and be like, are you nuts? All we're going to do is practice. We're not going to get in there and get our rhythm and our timing and play. You better put us in there. And I can't see it. You mentioned Bryce Young. I'm a Michael Penix fan because he's from down here in Tampa. If you're the Atlanta Falcons, you're going to play Kirk Cousins. Michael Penix theoretically is not going to play in the regular season. Why is he not playing in the preseason? Get as many reps as you can. I don't understand it.
It's interesting. It really is, because the players nowadays are a little more, all right, let's survive, and we got an extra game now. Do you feel like that extra game on the season is part of what's played into that?
I don't think so, Jack. It's an extra game, bro. Like, you get to a point where whether it's 16 or 17, it's all part of doing business. You're a pro. You just fix your mind to do what you have to do. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, the veteran guys that I had, they obviously don't want to play the whole preseason game. They don't want to play 80 plays in a preseason game. But to not go out there and get your timing and not be ready to go, and to treat the first regular season game like a warm-up, they don't. I don't think they want that.
And then you think about this too. When you're when you're practicing in the preseason, yeah, there's a certain level, even if you're playing or practicing against another team. But when you get in that first preseason game, just like Aaron Rodgers dropped back and he tried to plant off his foot and his Achilles popped. Well, if he would have played more in the preseason, maybe his body would have been used to the turf. Maybe he would have been a little bit more warmer. I mean, there's a lot of conclusions you can draw from it. But at the end of the day, you can't get better playing football, Coach, unless you play.
Yeah. I'll give you one example that still hurts my heart. 2004, we opened up in New England against you guys on Thursday night. Edgerrin James was coming off an injury. We didn't play him in the preseason. We're in a tight game with you guys. Edgerrin fumbled twice in that game. First contact he had. Edgerrin James is not a fumbler, but he fumbled twice in that game. And I think back, had he had some time in the preseason, just get a few hits, get in there a little bit and get going. Does he fumble twice? Maybe he still does, but I'll never know.
Wow. Yeah. Well, speaking of not playing, Brandon Aiyuk, this is one that every time a little piece of news comes out of this, our group chat blows up. So Brandon Aiyuk still not signed in San Francisco. There's been some whispers about what may be occurring with the Pittsburgh Steelers and them trying to bring him over. If you're San Francisco, how are you viewing this? I'll start with you, Coach. I know you've had a big opinion on this one.
Yeah, we talked about this the last time we were together. I wanted to see what happened here. Brandon Aiyuk is not only a big part of their offense, but he's a guy that everybody respects on the team. He's done his job. He's worked hard. Now, are we going to take care of him and have this guy here? And are we going to get that production? We went through it last year. The first game of the regular season, we had Kansas City and Detroit, and Chris Jones wasn't out there. That impacted their defense tremendously. By the end of the year, when we saw him again, that was a different defense because of Chris Jones being in there. And I think the same thing is going to be with San Francisco's offense. If Brandon Aiyuk is not there, it's going to be a different offense, Rob.
And I think a big part of Brandon Aiyuk being upset is he's basically saying, look, guys, you knew that I was going to be in this position coming off a huge year. But last year they went and they gave Christian McCaffrey extra money. I think they bumped him from 15 to 17, $18 million. Like they redid his deal and gave him more money. And you start to look at Kittle, you start to look at the fullback, how you check, those guys are good players. But if I had to choose, I would choose Brandon Aiyuk over both those guys if I had to trade one or two of them to give me the ability to sign Brandon Aiyuk. John Lynch knew that this was coming on. You're like, how do you not sign this guy early? Did you not believe in him? You made him play, basically made him play a year and prove himself. He proved himself. Now pay the kid. I mean, he's a great player. He's going to continue to get better. He's your number one guy. He stays healthy. And if you didn't want to get rid of Kittle or Juszczyk, and I like both of those guys, what about Debo? You could have moved Debo because half the time he's injured, right? And he's still a great player.
Yeah, I think this could really mentally work with the 49ers team. When you've got one of your big assets who's a good guy, everybody on the team respects him, and they feel like, gosh, we're not taking care of one of our own. That's just that can fester in the locker room.
And Coach, what about Trent Williams? You don't have one of the top 2-3 left tackles in all of football. So you got a lot of problems. Trent Williams, he wants more guaranteed money in his contract. Brandon Aiyuk needs a new contract. George Kittle is a really great tight end, but at the end of the day, you don't see him in these games, these playoff games, just killing. You know what I mean? Like, I like Brandon Aiyuk. I think a number one receiver to get a guy that you drafted, a guy that you bred, that you taught, and that you got to this point where he's a Pro Bowl, all-pro type wide receiver. Brandon Aiyuk is the real deal. Jack, you and I have been talking about him the last 2 or 3 years, excited about him.
There's no question. I think that the situation they've got themselves to your point, is they're paying left tackle big money, need even more money. They're paying Bosa this mega deal. They're paying Debo. They're paying a running back, which a lot of teams don't do. They're paying Fred Warner at linebacker. So they have a lot of big contracts, and they're bracing for impact of Brock Purdy, which is going to be a massive contract. So they're crunching the numbers going, how do we fit this into the equation? And I'm sure it's difficult to do all that. Do you feel like they'd have to move one of those big pieces, like trading Kittle or trading Debo? Those are big statements. Do you feel like that's what it would take in order to get him at a number he's satisfied with?
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Jack. That's the problem that they have, and that's what the players may not understand. They're sitting there, hey, look at our salary cap. We've got room to do Brandon. Why don't we do him? Well, that management is looking ahead for a year or two down the road when they've got to do that mega deal for Purdy. Now, what does that look like? Where is this money going to come from? And they're sitting there saying, well, we can't pay Brandon too much because that's going to impact what we can do down the road. It's a tough situation, but I just think there's some way, somehow, they've got to get Brandon Aiyuk done.
Yeah, and if it's me, Coach, if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm not worried about a year or two from now. The last 2, 3, 4 years, they've been basically all in trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm going back all in trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm getting Trent Williams in camp. I'm signing this kid. And when it gets to the point where I have to pay Brock Purdy, yeah, there's going to be some guys that I have to look at, Debo. There's going to have to be some guys like Kittle that I'm going to have to look at. And you can always go a year later and restructure Joey Bosa's contract. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the quarterbacks, because the preseason in general, it always seems to be about these rookie quarterbacks, because it's our first look at seeing them in the NFL, and you're going, okay, what does Bo Nix look like in Denver? And what's the first overall pick in Caleb Williams look like? And Jaden Daniels as well. So, Rod, I'll start with you here. The rookie quarterbacks, what's caught your attention so far?
Caleb Williams, and I get so tired of people being from the Chicagoland area calling me, talking about, hey, we're going to win the division. We're going to the Super Bowl. We finally got Patrick Mahomes' little brother, quarterbacking for us. Yeah, he's a rookie quarterback. I was with Ryan Leaf, the second pick overall. You had Peyton Manning, and they both struggled as rookie quarterbacks. And no matter how fantastic this young man looks, all the incredible passes and all the things that he can do with a football, there's going to be times where he's going to mess up. The defenses that he sees now, Coach, are very vanilla. He sends cover 2, cover 1, cover 3. He sends some basic defenses. When he gets to the regular season, defensive coordinators are going to be game planning for him. They're going to be showing him all different types of looks. So I anticipate him being like us on Sunday watching this saying, wow, but also saying, wow, how did he throw that interception? That's the type of season that I feel like he's going to have. Yeah. But I think he's going to be the Rookie of the Year. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love the fact that these guys are playing. They're doing some good things in the preseason. We need to see that. And I'm with Rodney. You need to put these guys in and let them play and let them grow. I wasn't there for Peyton's first year, but it was NFL record for interceptions, 3-13 record. But he told me he could not duplicate that experience. And it would have hurt him. No way he could have just sat on the bench and watched and learned. He wanted to be out there, and he grew from it. So I think you got to put these guys in. My only negative is they're doing some great things in the preseason, but as Rodney said, they're doing it against vanilla defenses, and in a lot of cases, they're doing it against third stringers, against guys who they aren't going to be playing against in September.
You're right. And the one thing that makes me nervous a little bit about Caleb Williams is the Superman ball, right? The superhero ball. Because sometimes he just will hold that ball and try to make one guy miss and then try to make the second guy miss. Now try to buy 3 extra seconds. And it's great in college. You know, there's certain moments where you go, wow, man, was that the most incredible highlight? But you already saw a little bit in the preseason how fast everything happens in the NFL. And so I think guys like Bo Nix, who are just hitting the back foot and getting it out, even Jaden Daniels, he's just getting the football out quick. That seems to translate better to the NFL to me than holding that football forever and trying to be superhuman.
Yeah, I hope that Caleb doesn't get overconfident in the preseason. He's doing some of these things. It's going to be a different group of people he's going to be facing in 3 weeks. That's for sure.
Hey, Jack, you mentioned Bo Nix. I had a chance to go back last night and watch him play. And, you know, I like what Sean Payton did with him, Coach. Just getting the ball out of his hands quick, you know, little curl routes, and then also using his athleticism to boot him out, get him outside the pocket, but just keep getting rid of the ball out of his hands quickly. And this kid is accurate. He's tough. Yes. He's competitive. I loved him in college. And that's one of the things that stood out to me was his competitiveness and just how tough he was, how his teammates embraced him, how his coaches loved him. I love the kid. I've never met him, watched him play, and I'm like, man, this kid is a dog. I'm really excited about him, Coach.
Rodney, I got to be around him a little bit when I was out at Oregon, and you're right. His teammates love him. He's experienced. He's played a ton of football. He's a great learner. He's a humble kid, all of the things that you're looking for. And I think he's going to have a great career. He's with a good quarterback guru in Sean Payton. He's going to do things that fit him. I think he's on his way. I really do.
And Sean Payton will run the ball. They got Tim Patrick. They got those big wide receivers, Cortland Sutton. So, yeah, I think he can be poised for a really good year. I think he's an upgrade over Russell Wilson.
No, he's going to have a good career.
Yeah, and he's a little more athletic than I probably was thinking that he is. You know, you think about Caleb Williams and you think about some of the other guys, but when you watched him play in that preseason game, you know, he's not going to win every play with his feet. But when he needs to, he's able to get away from guys. He looks fluid on those bootlegs. And so that athleticism element with Sean Payton and the quick passes and all that, it could be a combo. So
yeah, when
that's
you watch
cool.
him play, you don't. Hey, Jack, when you watch him play, you never sit back and say, "Oh, this is a rookie." You don't say that, you know, because he looks so confident. It's not like he's hesitating with the ball. You know, the curl is covered. He hits it out to the running back, the swing on the running back. I just like the way Sean Payton has him going through his reads, getting rid of the ball, and that ultimately builds confidence.
Yeah, and I go back to something Andy Reid told me when he was talking about scouting quarterbacks. He always looked for guys who had a track record, who had played a lot of football. Bo Nix has played a ton of games in college.
Yes.
He's not a 1 year, 2 year flash in the pan. Oh, he just came on the scene. He's played a lot of football. He's very smart, and I just think he's going to do really well.
And Rodney, I was just thinking about you too as well with the Atlanta Falcons. This has been one heck of an offseason. New regime, bring in a new coaching staff, bring in Cousins, and it only began there. How about Matthew Judon and others and what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, also using that draft, that number 9 choice on a quarterback as opposed to a pass rusher. But now they get their pass rusher in Matthew Judon. This is a guy that lives in the backfield. As you can see, he's been a very consistent pass rusher. He gives you everything. I know Matthew, he's a hard worker, great locker room guy, and he's going to come in and make a huge difference. Plus, he's highly motivated. this is the guy that's looking for an extension. He wants a 3 or 4 year extension, and he feels like that he can continue to play on a high level. And he's going to like Atlanta. Atlanta's going to be a good place for him, playing for Raheem Morris. But also you look at Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons is a heck of a free safety. But them to get an all-pro safety at this point in time in the season, he's a pure free safety, over 30 sacks in his career. And he can play strong. He can play free. He lined up next to Jesse Bates. This is the best safety tandem in the National Football League, along with a really good corner in A.J. Terrell. I'm excited about the Falcons. And, Coach, we coming for you, Coach. We coming for Tampa Bay.
Well, I was going to say, you talk about that NFC South, and my neighbor, right, a couple of houses down, Todd Bowles, is not going to be happy with you saying they're coming for us. But I tell you what, they have made some moves. I love what they're doing with the defense. You know, Raheem's going to have them ready to go. It comes down to quarterback play. And if Kirk Cousins can stay healthy and give them consistent quarterback play, they are going to be tough.
Coach, what I saw last year from the Falcons, they lost a lot of games in the fourth quarter because of the quarterback couldn't make some of the simple plays. Kirk Cousins will be able to make those plays. He's going to take them to that next level. I promise you that.
There's going to be a lot of turnovers. I'm just thinking about Justin Simmons. He picked off Patrick Mahomes more than anybody. I mean, he was the one guy that could get in Mahomes' head. And Jesse Bates, the 6 interceptions he had last year, some of them so creative, and just him reading the quarterback. And how many times are we jumping off the couch and SS3 sitting there watching the games on Sunday going, what did he just do? And you put 2 of them back there, veteran guys that are going to be lining everything up. I like this a lot for Atlanta.
Yeah, and what Raheem can do with those versatile type guys and moving people around, they're going to be a headache for people.
Yeah. Who do they play at quarterback, especially early in the year with Cousins? And how would you play this whole situation out?
I think if you really feel like you're close, as Rodney thinks they are, you go with Kirk Cousins. You go with that veteran guy who's been there. If you were thinking, hey, we're a year or 2 away from really competing and going after that title in the South, then maybe you go with Penix. But I think you got to go with that veteran guy right now.
Yeah, plus you guaranteed him $100 million. I mean, you paid him a lot of money. and Kurt is the better quarterback. Kurt is the better quarterback. Now, Michael Penix is obviously he's got potential and things like that, but Kurt is the better quarterback. He'll come in, he'll settle them down. He'll get the ball to Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, all those guys. They got a lot of weaponry. And I think switching offensive coordinators, bringing in Kirk Cousins, that's going to change their identity totally.
Yeah, they got Zach Robinson, of course, who was there in L.A. as well, coaching Stafford. We got to catch up with him a little bit before the game, but really a good run they put together. Another team, another offense that was just really has the league buzzing right now is the Houston Texans. And Rod, I know you've been tracking them through the preseason. What are you seeing with this group?
You know what, man? They're so stacked on the offensive side of the ball. But I look on the defensive side of the ball, and I just continue to look at Danielle Hunter. This is a guy that no one respects. Like, this guy is one of the best in the National Football League. If he was playing in a bigger market, he would get more attention. I think he's going to have a big, big year and potentially be on that list for Defensive Player of the Year, playing, that cover 2 system that they play, Coach.
Yeah, and you can't oversell what D'Amico Ryans has done there. He's turned this from a losing, non-competitive organization where now people are excited about playing there. And that defense is going to come out. They're going to be lights out. CJ Stroud's going to be better than he was last year. If their receiving core doesn't get into the up and downs of who's going to get the ball and who's getting the most touches and all that, if they can stay on point there, they're going to be hard to handle.
And they could potentially have the best secondary in the National Football League with Jalen Petrie and Kamari Lassiter and those guys, Derek Stingley Jr. These guys are young, they're talented, and D'Amico Ryans will have these guys disciplined. They'll try to keep everything in front of them. They'll play a lot of zone and allow those pass rushers. It's somewhat like a bend but don't break defense, Coach. But they try to create turnovers, and they let those young linebackers just fly around.
And you know what it's like playing behind a second or playing in a secondary that, you're playing behind great pass rushers where you can get a jump on the ball, and adding Danielle Hunter to Will Anderson and that pass rush group, that ball is going to come out quicker, and you're gonna have some guys back there hunting for that football.
I can't wait to see the Texans play live.
How about Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, week 2 on Sunday Night Football? Anytime you see a team times as Houston has on our Sunday nights, you know they must be doing something right. I cannot wait to watch that.
Guys, where's that game at?
I think it's in Houston.
Right? Yes. Yeah, it's in Houston.
Yep. It's about time to start packing for Brazil. I don't know what you guys got ready, but let's get packed up for Brazil. We're heading down 2 weeks from opening kickoff. It is going to be one heck of a season. Sunday Night Football. Great seeing both of you. Look forward to seeing you in person.
Big game to start the year off.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.